57 years of existence of the African Union, including its precursor, the Organization of African Unity. It was on this day that our forefathers and mothers expressed the need to unify Africa in search for political freedom. We extend our felicitations for a happy Africa Day 2020 celebrations. On this occasion, we wish to congratulate Your Excellency Cyril Ramaphosa for your election as a chairperson of the African Union, and assure you once more that Pan-Africa Women's Organization and the African mothers in general will fully support you and work together with you for the betterment of the continent and beyond in the spirit of the African unity. Let me thank their majesties and excellencies, head of states and governments of the African continent for having granted power special agency in the status in the African Union, and the declaration of 2020, the decade of the financial inclusion of African women. The recognition accorded to the African women throughout the continent is a magnificent victory in continuing for search for African unity in unison and the adherence to the principle of African freedom and unity. We pay tribute and homage to our forefathers and mothers who sacrificed their lives for the freedom of the African continent and the legacy left for us to continue with the spirit of unifying Africa for freedom and justice for all, to make Africa a better place to be. It is because of their foresightedness and visionary leadership that today we celebrate the 57th anniversary of African Union. Women of the continent celebrate the adoption of the Protocol of the Rights of Women in Africa, a landmark achievement of the continent. We have noted with satisfaction the progress made so far by the countries that ratified the protocol and appeal to those that have not done so to do so. Dear fellow Africans, the task before us is still to unify our continent, and the investment in women is to marshal the active saving of our people as we forge ahead united, desire to move forward together, and honor equality between men and women in building the Africa we want. We appreciate the effort made by African Union Commission by spearheading the launch of Agenda 2063 under the able leadership of the then chairperson, Madam Nkosazana Dlamini Zuma. The campaign to end child marriage in our continent is reaping notable results. Investment in youth is the right direction to accelerate the African transformation. Ladies and gentlemen, in our recently concluded Congress that took place on the 26th to 28th February this year in Windhoek, Namibia, priorities were identified and resolutions were taken. The Congress resolved, among other things, to call on the African Union to adopt a decision to provide an annual grant to PAO that will enable the realization of programmatic interventions for women's financial and economic inclusion, and also call upon the governments to support the establishment of the national platform of PAO with dedication, resources, and support in their respective countries. During this Congress, the African women declared to work with the African Union in addressing obstacles inhibiting economic development of women and put in place necessary mechanisms designed to advance women's social advancement and economic development. Let us celebrate our day, the Africa Day, by paying our deepest sincere tribute to all men and women at the forefront of fighting coronavirus. They are all indeed our true heroes during these difficult moments. I urge and appeal to all Africans to embrace and uphold dignity by virtue of our common humanity. We have achieved historical gains in different aspects. We hope for a prosperous and conducive environment in Africa. Rise, Africa. Happy Africa Day. Long live Africa. I thank you.
Greetings from Addis Ababa. The African Continental Free Trade Area Secretariat became operational on the 1st of April 2020. It holds great promise for Africa's development, great promise for boosting intra-Africa trade, and it is my mission to make sure that the benefits of the African Continental Free Trade Area reach all segments of our society across the African continent. Young Africans, women in trade, big African corporations, small and medium enterprises. This is our objective, to make sure that boosting intra-Africa trade becomes a reality for everybody in Africa.
Dr. Kenneth Kaunda, affectionately known as KK, is the former president and founding father of Zambia from 1964 to 1991. Dr. Kaunda joined the anti-colonial Northern Rhodesia African Congress and later became the leader of the liberation movement, advocating a policy for non-violent action. Dr. Kaunda also afforded liberation organizations across the continent like ZAPU and ZANU of Rhodesia and the African National Congress to set up headquarters in Zambia. In 1991, following his retirement, Dr. Kaunda has been involved in many charity organizations. Much of his energy has been focused around limiting the spread of HIV and AIDS. President Kenneth Kaunda remains the only surviving founding father of our continental organization. On the 28th of April, he celebrated his 96th birthday. It's truly an honor, privilege, and blessing to still have him among us, to continue being a well of wisdom to many across the continent. He remains an invaluable treasure to the African continent.
Comrade President Cyril Ramaphosa, Chairman of AU, representing all their excellencies, heads of state in Africa. Greetings and felicitations on the occasion of the 57th anniversary of the founding of our organization. You have kept the dream alive, and Africa has hope of greater success. Mr. President and Chairman, I could mention all the names in the living history of the AU and Africa. Heroes, some of them well known, unsung, many others unknown and unsung, but the list is long, and it will take at least a whole day to go through it. Suffice to say, they lived the dream of a united Africa and did their bit. Many, too many died for the cause. Remember to always think forward and have a clear destination to where we are taking our continent through this organization. Our colonial borders have long separated us. Now a truly united Africa should rise, and initiatives like the African Continental Free Trade Area are a step in this direction. And now it is up to you, your colleagues on the continent and in the diaspora, to push ahead and fight for our people's dignity and freedom. Freedom from poverty, hunger, and disease. Mr. Chairman, congratulations once again for keeping the dream alive. God bless all the way, all the time. Amen.
An Africa that is strong, resilient, united, and playing a leading role on the global stage, sits at the heart of the African Union Agenda 2063. Driving this noble vision is the chairperson of the African Union, His Excellency President Matamela Cyril Ramaphosa of the Republic of South Africa. President Ramaphosa was a leader in the anti-apartheid struggle. He headed the process of drafting a constitution for a free and democratic South Africa. He's also the founder of one of the largest union federations on the African continent, the National Union of Mine Workers. And in 1987, he received the Olaf Palme Prize in recognition for his commitment in the international struggle for human rights. His Excellency, the chairperson of the African Union and President of the Republic of South Africa.
Fellow Africans, on this day 57 years ago, the Organization of African Unity was born. From the beginning, it was dedicated to the idea that only through unity could Africa safeguard its independence and unlock its potential. Today, we pay tribute to our forebears, the founders of the OAU, whose dream of greater African integration and unity has endured. We also honor the legions of revolutionary leaders of Africa who took up the mantle of Pan-Africanism and who fought for the economic and political integration of our continent, Africa. They have left a formidable legacy for our continent and all its peoples. They continue to inspire us and the generations that will come after us. It was the mission of the founders of the OAU to liberate the continent from the clutches of colonial oppression, to restore Africa's fortunes, and to restore the dignity of every African man, woman, and child. We are reminded of the difficulties they had to overcome and the resistance they encountered from foreign powers that had much to gain from exploiting divisions on the continent. Yet they taught us the power of perseverance and sacrifice, of dedication to an ideal, and that an Africa united can overcome even the greatest of challenges. We mark this Africa Day in the shadow of the coronavirus pandemic, which has swept across the world and left no part of our continent untouched. Thus far, almost 96,000 people have been infected on our continent, and almost 3,000 have lost their lives. This COVID-19 pandemic will have a lasting impact on our ability to meet the aspiration of the African Union's Agenda 2063 of a peaceful, united, and prosperous continent. This virus has exposed the deep inequalities that continue to exist on our continent and across the world. It has shown how far we are from realizing our developmental goals and our responsibilities to the citizens of our continent. But at the same time, this global crisis should enable a new Africa to come to the fore. It should be an Africa of heroic acts of solidarity, an Africa of cross-border collaboration and sharing of knowledge and resources, an Africa that is united by a common goal. The challenge of this pandemic has shown how Africa is able to work together to solve its own problems. Day by day, across our continent, we are seeing the unity that is our strength being put to the service of saving lives and supporting the vulnerable. We salute the latter-day standard bearers of Pan-African unity, the health workers and the medical personnel, the scientists and the epidemiologists of our continent. We salute the Africa Centers for Disease Control and Prevention for leading our continent's response to the pandemic. We also pay tribute to the community workers, the non-governmental organizations, and the leaders of government and business who have lent their full support to Africa's coronavirus response. The African Union and its various organs has shown leadership and acted with speed to address this crisis. We thank our brother, Dr. Tedros Ghebreyesus, the Director General of the World Health Organization, for demonstrating strong and foresightful leadership to the world during this crisis. We thank all the patriots on our continent and our friends in the international community for showing solidarity during this difficult time. We know that no country can overcome this challenge alone. We call on developed countries, multilateral institutions, and the donor community to provide vulnerable countries across the world, especially on our continent, with the necessary support in the form of diagnostic and therapeutic medical supplies, as well as the necessary financial support to sustain the livelihoods of vulnerable people. We repeat our call for a comprehensive, robust economic stimulus package for Africa that includes debt relief and other support measures for the continent's immediate humanitarian needs and necessary economic recovery. As we deal with the impact of this pandemic, we repeat our call for the unconditional lifting of sanctions that have been imposed on Zimbabwe and Sudan. As Africans, we have taken firm charge of managing this pandemic. We have a comprehensive strategy formulated by the African Union and have appointed special envoys to mobilize the financial and other resources necessary for its implementation. COVID-19 knows no borders, no nationality or skin color. To address the escalating humanitarian crisis, we need to deepen our solidarity. We must ensure the pandemic does not reverse our developmental goals. We must forge ahead with meeting the aspirations of Agenda 2063. We must move ahead with the most ambitious step towards Pan-African integration to date, the creation of the African Continental Free Trade Area, and ensure that it is operational soon. We must not let up on our efforts to drive the African agenda of security, peace and stability, of democracy and human rights, of women's emancipation and the protection of the environment. We must not, under any circumstances, allow this global health emergency to derail our efforts to silence the guns on our continent. The tragic conflicts that are breeding instability in a number of countries on our continent are exacting a heavy toll on human life, and they must end. We must continue to affirm the supremacy of dialogue over military intervention. As Africans, we will continue to stand on the side of justice and support the people of Western Sahara in their enduring struggle for freedom and self-determination. We also call for the end of the oppression of the Palestinian people and the occupation of their homeland. Fellow Africans, Africa has known much turmoil and hardship throughout history. We have endured the worst excesses of humankind, from slavery to colonialism, to apartheid, and to prolonged military conflicts. But just as our ancestors were able to overcome the horrors of their time, so too will our faith, our courage, and our resilience as Africans see us through this time of difficulty. And so, in the words of Africa's first Nobel Peace Laureate, Chief Albert Luthuli, let us cast our eyes beyond the past. Let us fix our eyes firmly to the future that burns bright on the horizon. If we remain united, we will overcome this pandemic. We will recover and restore our economies. We will uplift the conditions of our people, and we will be worthy inheritors of the legacy of the great Africans who met in Addis Ababa, 1963, to form the OAU. If we draw from the deepest depths of African unity and solidarity, we shall prevail. May God bless Africa and protect her people. I thank you.
Fellow Africans, Africa is the cradle of humankind. Its children displayed courage and bravery to unshackle the manacles of slavery. We displayed audacity and unity to banish the yokes of colonialism. Our strength and discipline restored our dignity in the face of oppression. Armed together with our African courage, discipline, audacity, strength, and unity, we will overcome the COVID-19 pandemic. Now that we've heard from the chairperson of the Union, Africa Day celebrations will continue throughout the day across the globe and here on the continent, hosted on various platforms and anchored by a variety of parties. We strongly encourage you to participate in these festivities in the spirit of Ubuntu. Now, we kick off our cultural extravaganza here with one of the musical giants on the continent, Mr. Salif Keita. Nkosi, Sigelela i-Afrika.
Le 25 mai est le journée de l'Afrique. Il faut que
silencing the guns in Africa and promoting peace and development with drumming. Go on, save Africa from COVID-19.
Hi, I'm Salif Keita. Happy Africa Day.
ke hinise isok mogo bedi awako di bashite hinitama hini yoro jamboli ngantendo ke appel video corona wirisi kama konfini maya fo kambega to so namanya ina na bashite jini safna fla awobonya fle haide mburange nyugute mbana makolon to betani kolonga laye kanga foli ke ni ngonguru ye dem so banya bashitala namanya obegera haida mfaratu mini idem so furu bada fere
coronavirus y'a pas de place.
Coronavirus, it is real. American Janto, Sovonovi, Teri kana, bolo di mama, ijanto jama, bala, furanche drum, yogonche. Utilisent tous les shallow, what you
Lavez-vous les mains, parlez-vous à distance, respectez les consignes. Respectez les consignes. Lavez-vous les deux mains avec du savon. Lavez-vous les mains. Parlez-vous à distance. Respectez les consignes. À Paris, coronavirus.
On va te chasser.
Au Japon, coronavirus.
On va te damer.
En Amérique, coronavirus.
Y'a pas de place.
En Chine, coronavirus.
On va te chasser.
En Europe, coronavirus.
On va te damer.
En Afrique, coronavirus.
Y'a pas de place.
attention qui era tanga bane ma prévention solution tega koli wati ben ni savon etiso nongo gono tiso ye bonne action ate machito fara jani fara fifo protection ube metiri kele eni nani nyonche masko na ikisi choko file de barrière reste chez vous sur le couvre-feu police berekena mai ubi matraque.
Le monde est en pause, Corona est la cause. Banashi don baliduna beki janto, ate demiseni tote makoroto. Itega ko safune la, angana gera nyoko na riski bola. Ame domina ko bifura masorola, ijanto yera la kanato akatula. Anganya ko la me, consigne sanitaire ou de bandeme. Tu m'appelles.
Lavez-vous les mains, parlez-vous à distance, respectez les consignes. Respectez les consignes. Lavez-vous les deux mains avec du savon. Lavez-vous les mains. Parlez-vous à distance. Respectez les consignes. Attention, coronavirus.
On va te chasser.
Attention, coronavirus.
On va te damer.
Attention, coronavirus.
Y'a pas de place.
Attention, coronavirus.
On va te chasser.
Attention, coronavirus.
On va te damer.
Attention, coronavirus.
Y'a pas de place.
Faites attention à vous. Lavez-vous les mains chaque jour avec du savon et de l'eau propre.